Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Natasha here. I am coming to you today from a different room in our house, and I'm here with Dr. Titus Chiu.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome, everyone. We are going to be talking about the brain and how it relates to sensitive people today. So if you have not explored this topic or you're interested in how your brain is impacting your experience in this world, that's what we're going to cover today. So if many of you know, many of you might not know, but Dr. Titus Chiu is actually my partner, my husband. We live together, we work together, we do lots of stuff together. But in this journey, we both have explored a lot of similar things in holistic healthcare. I take more of a slant towards a lot of the emotional stuff and trauma-related things, and he's really dove deep into functional medicine, functional neurology, and really understanding how our brains and our body and our biochemistry work. So thank you for joining us here in the Canary community.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation. In a little bit, we'll have to take care of Koba here. She's going to have to go pee.
Okay.
Koba's our dog. So just to give you guys a heads up, if I pop out for a second, that's why.
She gets, we have a patio door and she slides in and out of that, and she always wants us to open it for her. Okay, so let's get started here talking about the brain. So most people who follow me or in my community identify as being really sensitive people or empaths, or just people who kind of are sensitive to their environment, sensitive to other people or emotions around them. And we talk a lot about that in our community as highly sensitive people or empaths or things like that. But what I wanted to bring you on to talk about is how that specifically relates. Oh, there goes Koba. I saw her behind you. How that specifically relates to things in the brain, because I know Titus's work really well, and he's helped me through my healing journey in a lot of ways. I wanted to bring him on to share that same information with you guys. So when you talk about brain health, you talk about the three pillars of brain health, right? The physical, the chemical, and the emotional. So can you tell everybody a little bit about those pillars?
Sure. Yeah. When it comes to brain health, I look at it really holistically. And over the 20 years of experience I've had, not only working with patients, but healing my own brain, I discovered these three key pillars of brain health. Number one is the physical brain. And that refers to the physical structures that actually make up our brains. Number two is the chemical brain, meaning the neurochemistry that surrounds our physical structures. And finally, number three, our emotional brains, our mindset and our beliefs about ourselves, about our world, about our health. All three pillars need to be looked at and cared for in order to have total brain health. And that's one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make out there when they're trying to work on their brain, is they might just focus on just one aspect of brain health, like the chemical brain. I see a lot of people doing. And the thing is, those three pillars, it's not just theory. It actually really is very practical application in a person's life, because each of those three pillars requires a different approach to healing and to brain health. As an example, like I said, one mistake I see a lot of people make is they focus on the chemical pillar, meaning they change their diet, they take supplements, maybe they even run advanced lab tests like we do in our practice, as you know. And they're like, they feel a little better, but they're like, okay, I'm not quite there. So then they further get rid of foods. And by the end of it, they're like eating nothing.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's necessary to clear out. But I find if that hasn't worked yet, then either like you have to continue to go deeper dive, which I find is just not the case and actually very unpleasant, or something else is missing either in the physical brain or in the emotional brain.
Yeah. So before we dive into the details of each of those pillars, have you noticed this kind of thing where people sometimes are more sensitive than other people, like maybe the patients that you work with, or just observationally what you know about neurology and biochemistry when you see people in the world? Do you notice that there's just clearly these people who are more sensitive than others?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really interesting because I specialize not only in the brain, but a big passion of mine is concussion because I was in a terrible car accident over 20 years ago and I had to figure it out on my own, really. That's why I went back to school. And the interesting thing is when I work with patients with concussion, really inform me about this whole idea of sensitivity, right? Because most people, I think a lot of people in your community probably identify as being sensitive in one way or another, maybe their whole life. Maybe they haven't realized it or put a term to that, right? But then what I've discovered, a lot of the patients I work with post-concussion syndrome, I would have to say about 50% of them were never sensitive, but then after their concussion, they became very sensitive, either to like physical sensations, like light and sounds threw them off, or maybe even movement, and then maybe some chemical sensitivities. We could talk about that, explore that in a little bit. And finally, sometimes they developed emotional sensitivity, and they were never like that before. So it really made me think about, there's something physical going on underneath this all, right? And that we can actually help a person through if it's impacting the quality of their life.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that you've worked with people over a decade, and you've worked with them in a clinical setting, one-on-one, in groups. You've taught professors.
I'm here with you.
To come back in. There she is. And I know that you not only have taught, other professors about the brain, but you've worked with people one-on-one to help them through their healing, whether that's been in office, in, even like at family gatherings. I see you like helping people too. But
also my nature.
Virtually online too. So how do you go about working with people? Like you work both in person, but you also have this new program, right, where people can do at home and work virtually?
Yeah, exactly. So a big part of my practice for many years, I would work with patients in office one-on-one, and I loved it. I still do. I still work with patients like that to that degree. And over the 20 years of figuring it out and healing my brain and working with thousands of patients and actually teaching other doctors, I discovered some secrets and some principles that just cut across like a person's health condition, whether regardless of gender or race or wherever they're from in the world, because I get people flying in from all over the world. And so I discovered these principles and I refined it and brought it back to them, my patients, and their lives improved. Their health got better. And so I realized, though, in that 20 years that I was trying to struggle to figure out my home brain health, that there was a massive gap in healthcare, especially when it comes to brain health and mental health wellness. And so I felt great that I was impacting my patient side. So I'm like, man, there are literally 1.1 billion people throughout the world struggling with brain and mental health struggles, challenges. So I didn't want to just sit around idly. And like a big passion of mine, in addition to like the investigative process, working with patients, uncovering their root causes and helping them through that, is also teaching. And so I'm like, why don't I use this passion of mine, teaching, and bring the same step-by-step approach, not only to just my patients in office or who I consult with virtually throughout the world, but actually put it together in a way that I could package it in this like a way that's very easy to use and understandable, that anyone could go through to really turn their health around. And so, I put together this program, as you know, Brain Safe Solution Masterclass.
Yeah. So Titus has been a teacher for, I don't know, about a decade or something. He teaches other doctors about neurology and even functional medicine and kind of this big scope of how to address the brain in chronic health conditions. And we actually met at a neurology conference. So we are, obviously partners now. We are married. We live together.
We work together. The brain for finding love.
Yeah, but we met at a neurology conference, and I was still like finishing up my degree at the time. And I didn't know that he was one of the professors, but in the following months, he ended up being scheduled a bunch in San Francisco where I was in school. So I was going to those courses and those seminars. And I was like, I guess after we had started dating, I then became his student. And he was just like
awkward.
Well, literally like one of the best teachers that I had through my entire doctorate training in terms of explaining things really, really well. So as I got to know him, I knew him mostly as Titus, who was the guy who I was dating, but then also Titus is the teacher, not so much the clinician, because I hadn't seen him in his office. But he was just such a great teacher, and I learned a lot of the neurology and functional medicine that I practice now with people and get great results. I learned it from him. So, he put together this really cool course that we're going to share with you guys after we talk a little bit more about things you can do at home to fix your brain. But if you're interested, we're going to put a link in here for that course so that you can learn directly from him. So we're going to dive right in and talk about first the physical brain. So when it comes to the physical brain and sensitivity, can you tell us a little bit about how that shows up? Like if somebody has issues in their physical brain, when you talk about the 3 pillars, physical, chemical, emotional, what does that look like for somebody to be sensitive? What is the root cause in the physical brain? And then what are things they can do about it?
Yeah, great. So going back again, the whole 3 pillars of brain health, it's a really holistic way of improving your brain health. And really, let me even step back a further bit. Like a lot of people wonder, like, why am I so passionate about brain health? And I'll tell you why. I've discovered through my own trials and tribulations of my brain breaking that our brains are our most precious and sacred organ. Like when they're not working, not only like can you not get by in your day or be patient or focused, right? Or have like good connection, be able to connect with other people. Like not only that, it could be the root cause for so many like serious health challenges. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't really have to worry about my brain because Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, that's like an older person's issue, But I've realized that when we can optimize our brain health, it completely changes our experience of life. That's why I'm so passionate about it. It's like, I recovered and I healed from my concussion. Like I definitely don't ever want to go back to how I felt then. But even now, these principles that with the 3 pillars of brain health, when I apply them, it just takes me to the next level. I can accomplish the things in my life that really matter to me, right? Yeah. I think so many people out there are struggling with not being able to, number one, do the things that they enjoy or love doing in life because of their brain health. Or number two, sometimes maybe they can't do the things that they need to, like work or take care of their family or pay the bills. Yeah. And so that's why I'm so passionate about my brain health, but also teaching others. So, but back to your original question.
Yeah, so how does that show up? Like, what are the symptoms that somebody might experience if they're having issues in their physical brain? And then how do you know that that's the root cause of what's going on for them?
Sure. Yeah. So with the 3 pillars of brain health, the physical brain, symptoms in the physical brain, especially when it comes to sensitivity, a lot of times I find that people are more sensitive to like the senses, like the 5 senses. Maybe they're more sensitive to touch. Maybe they're more sensitive to lights and sounds. Maybe they have a strong startle reaction, right? Yeah. If someone walks in the room or says something, it's a little bit louder out of like the normal, they might jump or get startled.
These are like, you're describing me and you know this. Yeah. Or like a strong startle. Yeah, a strong startle response. And and I used when I was a kid, and even sometimes now when I'm like kind of stressed and have issues, like the tags on my clothes bother me. And thankfully, because I live with Titus and we know this stuff, he does things to kind of find the root cause of that. So can you tell us what's happening in the brain when people have this?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, do you remember when we first got together? Like sometimes I go to the bathroom at night and you get so startled, but that completely changed. You know what I mean? You're still really sensitive and emotionally in tune, which is a gift and beautiful. But it's like, those things, it really impacted your quality of life, like sleep, and it impacted our relationship. But now it's like, I'll walk in there, like last night, actually, I walked in and you're just like,
I heard you, but I didn't get scared. That was the thing. I didn't have that startle response.
And so that's one thing I want to share with our audience. It's like, number one, and I agree, I totally love your work and your message. Sensitivity is a gift to be embraced. The problem is when it becomes oversensitive to certain stimuli that impacts your quality of life, right? So that's the work that I do. It's like, from the perspective of brain health, what can we do to shift it so you can further embrace your sensitivity and your intuition, right? And just your inner voice,
Yeah.
but then not because of it. So it's kind of like could be a double-edged sword if it's too much. As you know, like I remember you telling me your whole life you were just very sensitive, right?
Yeah, but I think what's happened in my healing journey, and obviously with the work that you do, and like I've gained through my healing because of knowing you, is that I've learned about my body, I've learned about my brain, and that brings a level of empowerment and just that education of knowing where it's coming from, and that there's actually a reason, like a root cause to it. That makes me feel like it's not just this overwhelming sensitivity that I don't have control over. It's like, okay, when my startle response gets worse, or when I notice that I'm just really irritated by my clothes, then I know, oh, there's this root cause in my physical brain, my chemical, or my emotional. And then I have the tools to match to that to calm it down and make it better. So let's jump into those tools. Like, tell us about the physical brain, like what areas of it is. And
can you share that screen? Is there a way to share that image? So when we talk about the physical brain, that's a good one. I'll blow this one up, see if we can. So when we talk about the physical brain specifically, what we're talking about when I talk about the physical sensitivities to like light or sound, that is actually rooted in this area we call the brainstem, which sits between your brain and your spinal cord. More specifically, it's the top part of our brainstem called the midbrain. So when that area becomes stuck in high alert, like after trauma, whether it's physical or emotional trauma, but even physical trauma, like I said, for people with head injuries, when that gets stuck, then you can experience light and sound sensitivity, or you can have trouble sleeping deeply through the night, or you can have pain sensitivity. So those are the ways physical brain imbalance could show up in your life. So some things that you can do very simply, everyone's probably heard about the vagus nerve. One way that we can calm that overactivity of your midbrain, which is the top of your brainstem, is by activating the lower part of your brainstem through the vagus nerve. So for those of you out there who are really sensitive to light, and I know a lot of people are on screens a lot more than normal recently, one simple thing you can do to activate your vagus and help with any light sensitivity is what we call put your hands right over your eyeballs like this. Just gentle pressure. And I have a whole YouTube video that I filmed specifically for that, 3 moves to relieve your eye strain. And so that's one simple thing, because when you do that, guess what? There is a neurological connection between your eyes and your brainstem, the bottom part of your brainstem, the medulla, where the vagus nerve lives. That's a bit more technical. So
if people are experiencing this, one thing they can do is activate the vagus nerve, and there's lots of at-home ways of doing that. But one way you're saying is to palm.
It's called palming. I have a whole YouTube video that I made about that. Actually, 3 simple moves that help relieve eye strain or any type of light sensitivity.
Cool. So this is just one example of the types of like brain, what Titus calls them as brain trains. So these are things that you can do. They're almost like neuro rehab exercises that you can do at home once you figure out what region of the brain it is. So for light and sound sensitivity, it's often that upper part of the brainstem called the mesencephalon. And one of the things you can do is vagal nerve stimulation. So like palming is a really easy one. People are really familiar with gargling, things like that. But these are really like cheap, easy at-home things that can be done to calm down these areas of the brain. So
that's the one shocking thing that I discovered along my 20-year journey to heal my brain and working with patients over 13 years is like, sometimes people need advanced therapies like what me and you offer our patients, right? Sometimes they need like chromotherapy, or they need photobiomodulation or advanced lab tests. But one shocking thing that I discovered is 80% of the patients that I work with, when they just follow like a pretty foundational, it's not basic, it's like, but foundational step-by-step plan, 80% of them would get better. And so a lot of patients actually didn't even need to come see me in office. That's what I packed together in my brand new program, Brain Safe Solution Masterclass. Is a 3-step formula to walk them through the exact same process I've worked with thousands of patients with, and also apply it to my own brain healing. But it was shocking, right? It's like a lot just can be done at home.
Actually,
your life.
I want to show people an example of that. So in Titus's teaching and his course, he puts together all these really fun, cute quizzes. And I really like this because I'm like a quiz nerd and I like to kind of do it myself. So he has all the different regions of the brain. So like the prefrontal cortex area. And you don't have to know a lot about neurology to know this, but there's, these symptom quizzes that you can kind of take and track yourself and track the severity of. So like I have brain fog. I often feel depressed. I get easily distracted. And it starts to build the score for you. And then there's all the different regions. So basal ganglia. You don't have to know what the basal ganglia is. It's just helping hone in that information for you. So I often feel anxious. I have nervousness even when nothing is quote unquote wrong. I hear that a lot from people in the Canary community, just kind of like this anxiety that looms. I get headaches, tight muscles, tremors, those sort of things. These are all related to this region of the physical brain called the basal ganglia. And then another one is the hippocampus. And there's just a ton of these types of quizzes in Titus's course that you do at home. And then you match it to things like vagal nerve stimulation, gargling, like light sound therapy, body therapies, things like that he teaches you. So he also has these quizzes for what he calls the obstacles to healing. And this is what a lot of like functional medicine is. So let's talk about the chemical brain. Like what are some symptoms that people who are sensitive experience those root causes in their chemical brain? It might not be your basal ganglia or your mesencephalon or your frontal lobe. It might be coming from another place. So tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So thanks for sharing those quizzes. So for those of you out there, just like Dr. Natasha said, I whittled it down to this 3-step formula. I call it brain healing made easy. You don't need to know anything about the brain to go through this 3-step formula. And I designed it as such. All you might know is, oh my God, I'm sensitive, or I have chronic headaches, or I feel dizziness or vertigo, right? That's all you need to know. And if you have if you have awareness and you're tuned in, you just fill out those quizzes and bam, you quickly get to the root cause. The physical reasons why you might feel more sensitive in a way that doesn't feel good. But answer to your other question, the second pillar of brain health is the chemical brain. And so I find that a lot of people, who go through the conventional system, they fall through the cracks because conventional medicine is so focused on the leaves of the tree. So if you imagine your health is like a tree, it's like focusing on the leaves up here versus, more importantly, we want to get to the root cause. So we already talked about some root causes found in the physical brain, like the brainstem, or specifically the top of the brainstem, the midbrain. But just like Dr. Natasha said, in addition, we have to look at what's happening in the soil. And so I've discovered 9 obstacles that really impact your healing or your level of sensitivity. And so one of the biggest ones out there that I've seen, especially as it relates to sensitivity, is inflammation. Because when your nervous system is inflamed, whether due to food sensitivities, whether due to gut imbalance, whether due to chronic stress, when your nervous system or brain is inflamed, it becomes more sensitive. Like, how many of you out there have had like a cold or like a flu before, and everything, you're just like, put me in a dark room, wrap me up, I just don't want to see or hear or talk to anybody? It's because your brain, due to inflammation from your immune system, your brain is more sensitive. Some of you out there probably like, yeah, that's how I feel all the time. Right? But
I think,
maybe it's due to like unchecked inflammation.
I think I noticed this, like when my brain inflammation gets worse, it's like I get headaches easier. It's definitely brain fog. I like start to mince my words, like I pull out the wrong word when I'm like trying to say something and I say like the wrong thing. But also the anxiety ramps up too in that way because of that inflammation. It's not only impacting the soil, which is like your body, your cells, but it's impacting all of your brain too. So those areas, if you had like physical brain weaknesses, all of a sudden get inflamed and reactive as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things in my practice. I'm over my 13 years of experience, I'm able to really quickly get to the root cause. I could talk to a person for less than an hour and hone in on which areas of the physical, which areas of the chemical, which areas of the emotion we need to focus on. And that's the thing. It's like, what I found is a lot of times if people are more sensitive due to the chemistry, it's usually what happens is a lot of things show up in multiple areas of brain function, both physical symptoms like light and sound sensitivity, both like mental or cognitive symptoms, like you said, brain fog, and finally emotional symptoms, whether it's anxiety, depression. Why is there so much variety? Well, number one, we're all unique. But number two, it depends on which area of your physical brain is being impacted, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's neural networks. The fancy term for these brain regions is neural networks. There are neural networks for anxiety. There's neural networks for depression. There's neural networks for light and sound sensitivity, as an example. And again, the reason why that's important, because each of those specific neural networks responds to a different antidote.
Yeah, totally. So it's in this step-by-step course that he has, it's like he basically reverse engineered his thought process in his brain. And he put it together where you can take all these quizzes and find out if your root cause is in the physical brain, in the chemical brain, or let's talk about the emotional brain now. So in my community, like a lot of times when I work with people, what we focus a lot on is trauma and mindset, like negative beliefs and thoughts and stuff that we kind of repeat and say to ourselves. So I actually know that there's neurological root causes in this. So this is such a big topic. I feel like we can do a whole hour just talking about this, but since we only have half an hour today, one of the things that I want to like talk to you about how it relates to the brain is like recurring thoughts or anxiety, or this thing where people kind of, we call it perseveration, or, you know, like not being able to stop that anxiety from ramping up, and then it turns into an anxiety attack, or you relive a trauma or like a bad emotional experience. Can you tell us how that shows up in the emotional brain and what regions of the brain that's talking to?
Sure. Yeah. And the emotional brain is the third pillar of brain health and is a big one. I'm sure, again, a lot of you guys watching out there. And that's why I'm so glad you connected with Dr. Natasha, because that's her jam, right? So a big part of my healing journey was stabilizing my physical structures through brain training, right? And things like meditation, but also brain training uses my 5 common senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. But a big part of my journey too was the chemistry. I had to change my diet, take supplements. I ran lab tests to identify what those obstacles were. And by the way, for those of you who are like, what lab tests though? In my program, I walk you through exactly which lab tests to ask your doctor. And finally, the third pillar of brain health is how I discovered this whole root cause neurology approach of the 3 pillars. It was my own struggles with my mind. Check this out. Isn't this a crazy idea where like I discovered that our minds, they can be our either best friends on our healing journey or our worst enemies. And so that's what I discovered for me is like for most of my life, and especially after my car accident, my mind just like sabotaged everything that I set out to do, whether to improve my quality of life or to find a good partner in relationship, or even just to heal my brain. And so through that process, I discovered these really powerful practices totally based on psychoneuroimmunology, as well as the latest in neuropsychology, like these practices that can literally rewire your brain. And it did my brain, right?
Yeah.
But what I found is, again, I didn't start there. And in my brand new program, we don't start with the emotional brain. Some people need to, I think, especially if they've explored a lot already. We start with the physical and then the chemical. And then from there, we start bolstering the emotional brain. Because at least for me in my journey, and for those of you out there, it might be different, because I think a lot of people who are sensitive already have a lot of skills in that area, right? The emotional area. But like in my journey, like I needed to first stabilize those things. So in terms of the emotional brain, like some things that you just mentioned, Dr. Natasha, is like perseveration on like thoughts or perseveration on emotions. There's a region of your nervous system called the basal ganglia, and it acts as the red light, green light for your brain. And the basal ganglia is it's a cluster of brain cells buried deep within your nervous system. And what they do, they put the brakes on, or they put the gas pedal on all your brain functions, meaning your thoughts, your emotions, as well as your movements. And so people who have issues in their basal ganglia, they might have too much accelerator on anxiety, right? Because it's normal to feel a little worry. So it's like there's a healthy level of that. But if you put the accelerator on that, then you can spiral out of control. And a lot of patients I work with have like panic attacks.
Yeah.
And the flip side, if you get stuck on a thought and the basic again, it puts the brakes on certain thoughts. You can have these thoughts that repeat, what we call OCD. But more importantly than any diagnosis is uncovering what the root cause is for you, as well as what the other soil imbalances are. And the beautiful thing is, once you get that guidance to point you there, you uncover your root cause and you have a plan that's right for you and your brain, healing is totally within your grasp and it's very much doable.
Yeah, so I want to actually share this because, we really appreciate you sharing this with our community, because I think this is something that isn't talked about as much. But the Brain Save Solution Masterclass is the whole program that Titus put together, and it's just phenomenal. Like, I've been his student as like a practitioner, learning about how to apply this as a doctor and help people, but this is built for anybody, everybody. We actually tested it with our parents and our friends and stuff to make sure that they enjoyed it as well. But it's really fun. Titus put together these really beautifully short informational videos where he's just there as your advocate and your ally in healing. And like I talked about, this is my favorite part, which I think the Canaries will like, is the quizzes. So there's all these quizzes to find out what regions of your physical brain, your chemical brain, and your emotional brain. And then the cheat sheets, the places where you can match that to the Brain Save brain train or solution that you can do at home. So it's covered in these 6 modules, and each module has a bunch of videos, like short videos that you can learn from. But pretty much, generally, I don't know if this is fully accurate, but the first 2 modules cover the chemical brain. The next 2 cover the physical brain, and the last 2 cover the emotional brain. So you can even kind of choose your own adventure and jump around as
exactly. That's the way I designed the course, is to be totally, it's complete because it looks at all 3 pillars of brain health, but it's also really easy to use this 3-step formula that I walk you through. But most importantly, to get the results that you're looking for in your health and your life, it's got to be personalized for you. And so a big part of what informed me, it's funny you say that, the choose your own adventure. When I look back on it, I'm like, I used to read these books called Choose Your Own Adventure books. They're amazing. It's like you go to one page, and if you want to open the door, you turn to page 72. If you want to skip the door and walk down the hallway, you go to page 69. And so it's funny, when I look back on it, I pretty sure reading that book growing up helped inform not only like this program, but kind of my clinical thought process. It has to be personalized to what you're drawn to, right? I really believe that we all have an intuition and we listen to that, but sometimes this get muddled. So it's good to have a guide to help point the way for you. This brand new program is that guide.
Yeah, totally. And this is something that was only extended to Titus's community, but because my Canaries are so awesome, if you've watched this and you've stayed with us, there is a secret code that is super fan, and it's just for Canaries, and it's only for this round. So if you go to brainsave.com/yes, and you want to enroll in this class and you enter the secret code, which is super fan, you will get a very, very, very good surprise on your checkout there. But I just wanted to share this with the Canary community, because I know we talk a lot about emotional health stuff. We talk a lot about trauma and healing, and we do get into functional medicine, and we get into some ways that neurology impacts our experience. But when it really comes to this deep dive in biochemistry, this deep dive in functional neurology, functional medicine, and what I refer to as the yang approach to medicine, we talk a lot about the yin and yang. That's kind of how Titus and I practice. I love doing the yin medicine. I do a little bit of both, because there's that little dot of, the black and the white and the white and the black. But when Titus works with his clients and when he teaches, he really, he's really a master at doing that yang approach with a little bit of that yin softness as well. So I thought that you guys would really benefit from this. If you have questions about brain health, about why your brain impacts your experience of being sensitive, or about what it's like to take this course, you can leave it in the comments or send me or Dr. Titus Chiu a DM. But I know he'd love to see you there. He's walking everyone through the course. So
yeah, and for those of you who are interested, today is your last chance because today, Tuesday, August 18th, it's 10:30 a.m. in Northern California right now. We're actually closing the doors to enrollment for the rest of the year at 4 p.m. Pacific. So if you're interested, if any of what we discussed like resonated with you, either intellectually or maybe emotionally or just some gut feeling, then definitely go to brainsave.com. You can do brainsave.com/yes. And we'll leave it in the comments for you guys so you can easily click on it. And I encourage you, I would love to welcome you to the Brain Save Solution Masterclass.
Yeah, and if you are watching this replay and it's past August 18th, send us some private message anyway, because I think Titus is collecting a waiting list for the next time he enrolls so that we can make sure that you are one of the first to be informed the next time this class opens. But
yeah, we have a lot of exciting things coming, bubbling in the works. So definitely, let us know. Even if it's past the day, we'd love to welcome you.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry guys for like not showing this to you sooner. It is the last day of enrollment. I've just been so busy with all the stuff we've been doing in our club and helping Titus with this course. But if you see this today and you want to send it to your loved ones or anyone who might need it, send it today because the doors are closing today. But we really appreciate you sharing all this brain stuff with the Canary community. If you guys have questions about this, leave it in the comments and we can always bring Titus back on to talk more specifically about any one of these topics. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good day.
Bye.
We're literally in the next room. I love